What's up guys, Jeff from Sorta Healthy here. Today we'll be talking about underrated exercises that you should be utilizing with your personal training clients, but probably aren't. This is a part 2 video. I've already talked about a good handful of underrated exercises in this video right here. So make sure you check out that video in addition to this one. Just like in my last underrated exercise video, I think some of my picks today will be somewhat obvious, but some of these choices will be surprising as well, no doubt about it. Before I start throwing that exercise mumbo jumbo at you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. That is the best way to support this channel, which is a free resource for all fitness professionals. Thank you very much for that support, everyone. On to the rest of the video. Before I reveal my underrated exercise picks, let me know some of your favorite underrated exercises down below in the comments. I always like to hear your perspective as well. So my first pick for today is the face pull. A bunch of people were wondering why the face pull wasn't mentioned in my part 1 video. There's one thing that prevented face pulls from being included before. Jeff Cavaliere. Jeff Cavaliere of Athlean X is probably the biggest fitness YouTuber and has always been a huge advocate of face pulls. He's promoted them so much that I almost feel like the movement isn't that underrated anymore. But then again, I do have to remind myself that not everyone watches as much YouTube as I do. There may yet be some who haven't heard the face pull gospel yet. The face pull is a great exercise for the rear delts, mid-traps, rhomboids, and rotator cuff muscles. When done properly, it's one of the best exercises for preventing shoulder, upper middle back, and neck injuries. In my opinion, the neutral grip, which you're seeing now, is the best grip for the exercise. Most people are too internally rotated at the shoulder like this, so making someone do this exercise with a pronated grip like this, well, it just might not be the best variation of the move. I prefer to keep the weight relatively light for face pulls, and I typically have clients hold the end point for at least a second. This is definitely one of those movements that's best when it's done slow and controlled. I'm sure no one is surprised by this, but Jeff Cavaliere does have the best breakdown for this exercise. Make sure to check this video out if you have form questions. My next underrated exercise, really it's 2 exercises, but we're gonna bundle them together since they're pretty similar, are chops and lifts. I tend to be a fan of core moves that do multiple things at once, and chops, which I'm showing on the screen right now, and lifts, which you're seeing now, both kill a few birds with one stone. When we're doing the chop or the lift, we're completing what is called a multiplanar movement. Oftentimes it's easy to overprogram movements in the sagittal plane or movements that go forwards or backwards. Lunges, squats, bench press, most forms of cardio all take place mostly, if not exclusively, in that front to back sagittal plane. When we go about our everyday life, especially if we're doing physical things, we're not only going forwards and backwards though. We're moving side to side, we're rotating, we're doing a bunch of different things. The chop and lift help you to target your client's entire body, especially the core, while also helping to improve your client's balance, coordination, and a bunch of other things as well. Exercises like the chop and lift tend to have more real-world carryover than a crunch, for instance. Almost everyone can benefit from at least one variation of these movements. If you have clients who do activities that have rotational components to them, these exercises are even more useful for those people. My next underrated exercise is a surprising pick because in many circles, it's a highly respected move. The next exercise is the Romanian deadlift, and I'm including it on this list for 2 reasons. One, the RDL is often overshadowed by the conventional deadlift, and it shouldn't be. Most clients should do both variations of the move, and some clients will do better with RDLs than conventional deadlifts. 2, the RDL isn't utilized as a teaching tool as often as it should be. If I feel that a client has suitable hip and hamstring mobility, one of the first things I'll do, usually in an early session, will be to teach them how to hip hinge. I'll usually say something like this to a client before we start. When you're lifting something up off of the ground, there's 2 ways in which you can lift that object that greatly reduce the chances of hurting yourself. The first thing you can do is squat the object. The second thing you can do is hip hinge or deadlift the object. It depends on the client, but I think sometimes when that explanation is given early, it does help people to appreciate the deadlift. Squatting is something that people usually can figure out pretty quick. Hip hinging typically takes more practice though. This is where the RDL comes in. It's my go-to method for teaching hip hinging. If someone is new to hip hinging, I'll have them start off with very lightweight or even a dowel if necessary. I also find that throwing too much cueing information at a client right off the bat is an easy mistake to make. For me, demoing the move usually goes a little something like this. So while I'm giving verbal instructions for the RDL or pretty much any exercise, I'm going to be showing my client the movement at the same time. So usually when I'm breaking down the RDL, I explain it a little bit like this. You want to keep your back flat the entire time, and what you're going to be doing is hinging mostly at your hips, only bending at the knees a little bit. Once you feel a pull in the backside of your legs, you're going to squeeze your butt muscles, keep your abs tight, and stand up tall. Now that's a lot of things, but we're going to break it down. So back is flat. Once I feel that pull in my hamstrings, squeezing my butt muscles, abs tight, standing back up tall. And I'm going to show you that just a few times. And this is kind of what it's going to look like full speed. And that's pretty much how I do it. Then I have the client perform the movement and offer them feedback. I don't necessarily try to perfect the move on day number 1. The RDL may take a few sessions to master. Keep the weight very light until the form is near perfect. Once they've mastered the RDL, incorporating other hip hinges like the conventional deadlift and the kettlebell swing will be easier if those moves make sense for the individual. My next underrated exercise pick is cheating, but I guess that's what I do because a few of my picks in my previous video were kind of cheating too. Anyways, slow eccentric movements are my underrated exercise pick this time around. Of course I'm cheating here because slowing down the eccentric phase can be applied to pretty much any exercise. The reason this is a great thing to have in your toolbox is that it gives you another method for increasing exercise difficulty. When an exercise starts to become too easy for our client or ourselves, we typically look to change a variable to increase the intensity. We can A, increase the resistance, B, increase the number of reps, C, increase the number of sets, or D, change up the variation of the exercise. This option right here probably gets overshadowed by the other ones too often. Maybe this is because we like seeing numbers improve and you see more of that with these options, but who knows. Regardless of what the reasoning is, with everyone, especially general population clients, you really should be changing up the variation of the exercise on a regular basis. One of the best ways to do this is to change up the tempo of the exercise, and that brings us back to my pick of slow eccentric exercises as being underrated. Many studies have shown that the eccentric portion of a lift, or the part where the primary mover is lengthening, that part of the lift is extra useful when it comes to building muscle mass. I'll include a few links to some of those studies in the video description for those who are interested. You probably don't even need to see those studies though. If you've ever done an exercise where you lengthen the stretch portion of the movement, you'll know that the exercise becomes harder. Not only that, but if you're not used to it, extending that eccentric portion of the lift, that is going to make you more sore in the following days. I don't know about you, but some of my worst DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness days, were after lifting this way. We know that muscle soreness doesn't necessarily mean muscle growth, but the two things are connected at the very least. Anyways, use these slow eccentric versions of exercises to help clients master the form of certain movements, and use them to make certain exercises harder and possibly more effective. My next underrated exercise is a bit of a different pick compared to the ones in my part 1 video and in this part 2 video as well. Straight arm pushdowns are next on my list. Weirdly enough, I just think this move is a bit forgettable. And it shouldn't be, because it's a great exercise for helping to develop the lats and a whole bunch of smaller supporting muscles throughout the back and core as well. I think oftentimes we're very focused on the biggest pushing moves, aka bench press, overhead press, push-ups, etc. The big pulling exercises like rows, lat pull-downs, chin-ups, etc., all of those things also get lots of attention. I think it's easy to forget about the straight arm pushdown because it kind of exists between those two worlds. It's a pushing exercise which primarily affects the back muscles, which is fairly unique. Also, I find that pretty much any client can do them easily form-wise, which is awesome. Of course, they're also useful for building extra stability around the spine, which is also great. Basically, just don't forget to have them in the mix when you're programming your client sessions. It's one of those movements we should all be doing in some capacity. My last underrated exercise is an interesting pick because I'm going to go against, at least a little bit, the guy who I was paying respects to earlier in this video, Jeff Cavaliere. Here's what Jeff of Athlean-X has to say about planks. And the plank, by the way, is my next underrated exercise pick.
What's up guys, Jeff Cavaliere, athleanx.com, and I fucking hate planks. There, I said it. I've got your attention too, probably.
In fairness to Jeff, just a few seconds later in that video, he does say planks aren't that bad as long as they're challenging, which I 100% agree with that. He's pretty negative when it comes to planks in general though, and he has a few videos where he discusses why he feels that way. Of course, a lot of this is just clickbait. As always, what he actually says in these videos is pretty fair. That said, I think with Jeff Cavaliere's audience, on average, planks aren't the most effective way to train core musculature. So I see the point that he Healthy and other influencers in the space are making. My argument is this: with advanced clients or people who have above average fitness levels, planks are pretty bad unless you're making them significantly harder in some way. And when I say making the movement significantly harder, I don't mean just adding more time under tension for this movement. I would say that planks are underrated for the general population though. They're underrated in large part because you have people making fitness content for fit people, saying they're not good, and when people see that, they assume they're not good for everyone. Good old-fashioned high or low planks aren't only good, I would say they're really good for beginners. Close to all of your clients should be doing some version of the plank, at least early into you training them. It's a relatively low-risk way for you to help those new clients to engage their core muscles, which are almost certainly underdeveloped. There's a good chance that as your clients get fitter, they will outgrow many variations of the plank. In my studio, if someone can do a plank for 2 minutes or longer with good form, you either need to make the plank harder or you need to give them a different exercise altogether. Overall, Athlean X is a great resource, and I'm a huge fan of Jeff's work. To be honest, he's probably influenced this channel more than just about anyone else. I just think thumbnails like this can be misleading to certain segments of the population. And when you're getting this many eyeballs on your work, you can make a perfectly fine move seem pretty bad. Unfortunately, that is kind of what it takes to get clicks these days, so keep on keeping on, Jeff Cavalier. What do you guys think though? Do you have any underrated exercises that you'd add to the list? Do you disagree with any of my picks? Make sure to let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I do always appreciate hearing what you guys have to say. If you haven't done so already, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, because both of those things do help the channel to grow, and that does allow me to create more free content for all of you. Thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time, stay sorta healthy.